The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Welcome to another edition of the Hoop Ball Sacramento Kings podcast. I'm your host, Christian Villere. You can find me on Twitter at MyBuddyChris. For all of Hoop Ball Sacramento Kings coverage on Twitter, it's at Hoop Ball Kings. And for all of your NBA news, NBA fantasy news, and Sacramento Kings coverage, period, it's hoop-ball.com. Go to the website, get the season pass now. If you're playing fantasy basketball, it is a must-have. If you are a new user to DraftKings and deposit $10 there, you can get the season pass for free. You can find this show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, the iHeartRadio app, and the Hoop Ball Radio app. Both of those apps are available for free to download in the iTunes and Google Play stores. On this episode of the show, we have Sacramento Kings beat blogger for Hoop Ball, Mr. John Schifferle. We talk about the game against the Bulls from Monday, the difficulty the Kings might have in making a trade due to the excellent chemistry that the team has. Also, we tackle the question that I'm sure most Sacramento Kings fans are rattling around in their mind along with us as well, which is, can we finally say that the Sacramento Kings are an average NBA team? Also, at the beginning of the show, there was a little nugget from Grant and Doug at the end of the broadcast last night, and we talk about that at the top. Anyhow, enjoy this episode of the Hoop Ball Sacramento Kings podcast. It is another day. That's John Schifferle butting in before I even get a chance to introduce him. Sacramento Kings beat blogger for Hoop Ball, recording this on a Tuesday night after the Sacramento Kings went into Chicago and routed the Bulls on their home floor. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well. That was almost really ugly for the Kings.
For 2 quarters, it looked like we were going to be talking about a loss today, and then De'Aaron Fox remembered that he's really good and he needed to put his foot down. That's what he did. He and Buddy in that third quarter, and they came out with a victory.
Yeah, he just changes the game when he plays like that. And some of the most ridiculous, transition attempts out of off of a make from the other team is just, I don't even know what you're going to do if he's going to do that. I mean, he just gets down faster than everyone else, and it's not like everyone else is just sitting around and forgot to get back. Like, you just can't really keep up with him.
It's blinding, the way he's able to get up the court. There were only 2 things that stood out to me from this game. Number 1, Zach LaVine, I think I said his name right there.
Yes. Dunk
in the first or second quarter. Can't remember which one it was. Willie Cauley-Stein. It's so easy to see. He not only got out of the way, but he did like a half crouch to fully make sure that he would not only not contest the shot at the rim, not only get out of the way, but make 100% certain that he wouldn't be in the photo for the poster.
So
it was amazing on many levels, and pretty much the only thing that stuck out from a perspective of a person who's looking for stuff to talk about the day after the game.
So if you've ever seen someone walking down the street texting and they're not paying attention and they almost run into a pole and then they put both their hands up and kind of go back, that's exactly what he did. Like, oh, excuse me, sorry.
Pardon me for attempting, even thinking that I dare get in your way, Mr. Zach LaVine, on your way to the basket.
Yeah, that wasn't a good look. And I get getting out of the way for some dunks. Like, if you have like Giannis coming down the lane with a full head of steam, there's just no reason to get in front of him. He's going to make it.
Here's why I disagree. Any dunk can be defensed. You can stop any dunk because it's going to the same place that you want to block it. All you got to do is time it right. That does take some skill, but as someone with incredible athleticism himself and a good deal of length, Willie Cauley-Stein is properly equipped to do that.
Well, if you're gonna block a dunk like that, you probably. So if in the Giannis example, because Giannis is bigger than Cauley-Stein, he's gonna have to get off the floor quicker than Giannis does. Which means Giannis has that advantage of saying, all right, I can move a little bit right before I jump and then just kind of avoid you enough to draw the foul, get the and one, and that is what it is. But with Levine, who is much smaller than Cauley-Stein, he just needs to get in front and go vertical. Maybe jump if you get there a little bit late, but he can block that, and he can at least try. And if he does try, worst case scenario is that he fouls Zach LaVine, which good. Send him to the line. Make him actually make the shots. But yeah, that one was indefensible for me. There are times where I understand doing that because there's just nothing you can do. But that was not one of those times.
It was like encompassing of what we've talked about with Willie Cauley-Stein. It was right there. And it was so bad that I just had to make note of it and point it out later on. The other point for me that I took away from this game, right at the end, Grant and Doug, Grant especially, made a point of hoping that on Wednesday, that would be tomorrow, for the game, there will be lots of fans in the arena. And not only lots of fans in the arena, but fans in their seats. I'm guessing that at some point, either he and Doug or he with somebody else in the organization has discussed the sparse crowd that we see in the seats at Golden One Center. This does not mean there are not people in the arena. This does not mean they aren't selling tickets at a pretty good clip. I actually checked this via ESPN this weekend. They're at about 95% occupancy, which for my money, I'm thinking that's pretty good, especially now that they're ascending. I would expect that number to increase if they keep up their inspired play.
It's also, just to be fair, self-reported, and there have definitely been scenarios where teams have called certain things sellouts that were close, but not.
Well, but that's not even the thing, though. They are wanting to see more people in the seats. Yeah. They want people out of the concourse. They want people out of the Sierra Nevada Draft House, and they want them in the seats. That's because I guess it's a old school aesthetic. Like it even bothers me to a small extent, but I can't blame those people. And I don't think they're doing that either. They just kind of want to. Number one, they're cheerleaders for the team. They want people to come out, see the team, support the team. Completely understand that. And I think there's a little bit of a dislike for the way that things are currently constructed, and they just want people in the seats. I understand that. I empathize with it, but I was like, whoa. It seemed to me like they're calling out the fan base a little bit there right at the end of a win for I don't know why.
This didn't come from the team, and here's how I know. They put all that stuff in there so that people would go and spend money. The Kings have already gotten you to pay for your ticket, so that's done. They don't care if you sit in the seat. What they have not done is gotten you to pay for the food, the drinks, the team store stuff. I mean, that's why, you're sitting there in some point in the middle of the game and they're advertising like, oh, this section, whatever % off in the team store, go take a look. They don't say, oh yeah, go take a look later online or something. It's no, go take a look. You're getting a discount. The team wants you to go around and spend money. Do they want people to be looking like they're in the seats? For sure. And if they had it their way, it would be staggered to an extent. But the fact is, they don't care. This is probably strictly something that bothers Grant and Doug. And to be honest, it's classic Grant. This is something that would bother him. I'm not surprised at all.
It bothers me too. Like I look around at the arena, and most nights there are a lot of open seats, partially because of the stuff that I talked about, also because they aren't as good as they once were. And
yeah.
you have seen instances. I have seen instances this season. One in particular, the game against the Thunder, when the arena was pretty much full, but there were a couple reasons why. The weather was good that night. It was the weekend, the week of Thanksgiving, and there was a big name player coming to town in Russell Westbrook. Put all three of those things together, that arena was more or less a sellout. Everybody was. I was noticing that there were a lot more people especially in the upper deck, which was good to see. I was shocked that at the end of a big win like that, they would turn to making note of, wish we could get more people out to the arena, which is hard for. I don't know. I don't like it when teams do that because it's not like going to the game is free. So. Part of me, part of it's got to be the team giving. So it's just, I don't know, it's hard. And what I would prefer is the team command the attention of the community to come out and see the game because it is such an entertaining product that has been put out on the floor. Right now, we are heading in that direction, and to introduce some other variable like this that could have gotten attention but didn't really seems unnecessary to me. That's why I thought it was. That's why I thought it was noteworthy.
I don't get putting it on the broadcast. That just seems like an unnecessary thing to put out there. And I think another part of it is the fact that, if you're going to go and play like the Suns, and I'm sitting there and I'm really hungry, do I care that much about missing, 2 minutes in the first quarter to, go grab some food? If that's the Thunder and it's actually a really good game, I'm probably going to wait or figure it out. Another thing is the Kings have been very, very good, and I guess it's like a free advertisement here, but they've been pretty good about trying to implement things where you can get things brought to you at the seat. So I don't fully know how it works. I'm not a big technology person. I'm usually like one of the last people to join in on new things. But as that becomes more popular, more accessible, all that, I think you have a lot less reason to leave. But I think that's part of why when you see like Russell Westbrook in town, you're like, all right, I'm going to try and figure out how I can do all of the things I need to do out of my seat, specifically during halftime or like a long time out or whatever it is.
Let's get to the team. What's going on? I want to touch on something that you brought up, and that is the chemistry that's been built with this team. You believe that it's going to be difficult for this team to make a trade. State your case, sir.
So I don't think it's going to be completely out of the question to make a trade, but I think you look at if the chemistry on the team wasn't bad, but wasn't necessarily where it is right now, where it seems to be really, really good. They're just another NBA team. I think you're pretty willing to move Iman Shumpert at the deadline or before the deadline because, any pick you can get back is just another asset to potentially pick up a good young player. It just kind of makes sense. At this point, though, if you make that move, especially before you're looking to extend a lot of your young players, and especially before, right when you've built up a lot of this sort of capital around the league of the Kings used to do everything wrong, we are no longer that organization. I think you give a lot of that away by making some trades that may help you on the margins, but also end up pissing off a lot of the players in the locker room. So I guess my point is, if you want to go and look to move someone like Shumpert, someone like Willie Cauley-Stein, who I think those are the two probably big potential movers at this point, only because Shumpert's on an expiring deal, so is Cauley-Stein. Cauley-Stein's got a pretty manageable salary. Shumpert, a lot of teams could use what he brings to the table off the bench. So I think they're both movable, and I think the Kings could find a deal if they wanted to. But I think it's going to have to be a situation where you're just kind of blown away by what you get back. Because outside of that, like the trade that comes to mind, if you remember the Yusuf Nurkic, Mason Plumlee trade from, what was that, like 2 years ago?
I believe so. And I do remember that trade. Yes, I do. I follow the NBA.
And Damian Lillard, I remember, was pretty not unhappy, but just kind of made it known like Plumlee was a big part of our locker room, and it almost felt to me like this better really work, or this was a big mistake, because Plumlee's not an easy guy to lose in this locker room. And it did work because Nurkic was great for them to end that season. Plumlee would not have been able to fill that role, and they got a first-round pick out of it, if I remember correctly. So those are the trades. I think if the Kings are approached with just a slam dunk offer, we can't turn it down, then at the end of the day, the players will get over it. Because if they're a better basketball team, that's what they're there to do, and they get it. But you kind of have to be sure it's gonna be a better situation for you when you pull the trigger now, which is not something that would have been true in preseason.
Number one, those slam dunk deals are becoming harder and harder and harder and harder to come by, given this league is getting much smarter. And number two, I don't foresee any scenario where Vlade wants to mess with what's going on with them heading towards... Actually, I guess this is making your point. I guess I'm not countering your point. I'm just adding to your point. I don't see any scenario in which they want to explain to Vivek that they're making a move and this may or may not help them make the playoffs. I think everybody in that front office, especially the head honchos, 2-3 people that matter, desperately want to get to the playoffs so that they can show that there is some level of success that is happening in Sacramento. And I think everybody, you, me, all the fans, are clamoring to celebrate a playoff series in that new building. Given all of that, I think it's going to make it extremely tough to make a trade. I will counter your point on this, though. If they feel like it's going to make the team better to make the trade, they probably aren't going to worry about the chemistry issue in the locker room. Unless that player that they're bringing back would be an issue or has a history of being an issue in the locker room. If there is a move out there to improve the team, they might spend a little bit of time concerning themselves with how it's going to sit in the locker room, but ultimately they're going to pull that trigger. And they should. We should want a front office that will pull the trigger on trades that are going to make the team better.
Yeah, I just think it's all part of the calculus. And so, as an example, the salaries don't work on this, so it's not a real trade. But let's assume in February the Warriors are clearly going to finish with the best record in the NBA, and they say, we'll give you our 2018 first-round pick for Shumpert. You're basically locking yourself into getting that 30th pick. In a really horrible draft, if Shumpert's still helping you, and he's this huge part of your locker room, do you really want to go get that pick? Probably not.
I'm not
a huge... No. See, if Shumpert's not a huge part of that locker room, I think maybe they start considering that a little differently. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Maybe that pick's... I don't know. That's not a perfect scenario. I haven't really thought of trades, but if you're on the margin here, and you're just like, this is maybe a good idea, but... then you look at the fact that, I mean, everyone seems to like Shumpert. He seems to be the central of the locker, or the central piece of the locker room right now. So regardless of what you're doing on the court, I mean, just look at that game in Chicago. I have no idea why they turned it around so much in the second half exactly. But would it really shock you to find out that Shumpert was part of that during halftime if he really talked everyone up? And if that's the case and you trade that guy away just based on on-court production, you know, there are some games you may be leaving on the table because when you come out without energy in the first half, there's no one that's helping you turn that around the second half. And so that's where I wonder, if you start messing with the chemistry a little bit, does that spill over onto the court? And does that cause this season to spiral a little more than, you know, we would like to see, obviously?
This is a good point to transition into thinking a little bit about the future. We haven't done that a whole lot recently. Shumpert's 28 years old. Are you inclined... What did you just say?
I said, wow.
Is that old or young in your mind? Or is
I
that...
thought he was... I guess it's kind of what I thought, but I kind of thought he was older than that.
He's 28 years old. He's been injured a good deal. He's got foot issues. Is there an appetite for the Kings to re-sign him, at least if you're the one making the decisions?
I mean, sometimes these goodwill contracts, like J.R. Smith pretty clearly got one of these, the locker room loves you, and you just helped us reach a peak that we probably didn't think was going to happen last season deals after the Cavs won that title.
And he's got LeBron's agent. That helps.
Yeah, so, I mean, that basically he should not have gotten that contract. And I think what really put the Cavs behind the eight ball was them factoring in the fact that the team seemed to really like J.R. Smith at that point. And that was just, I don't know that makes much sense in the offseason. I do think that it means, because the team likes Shumpert so much, it means you keep your tabs on him and you see where his price is at, and you see, what are our options and what are we going to use that money for? What kind of deal is he looking for? All that. So he's in the mix, but I'm not making it a priority or anything. He's still probably a shooting guard, and the Kings already have two good shooting guards. So he's a great player to have around. But boy, like if the Kings went and made a trade for Otto Porter and Justin Jackson kind of started to step up even more in the second half here, I don't see a reason to bring him back on anything other than a small 1-year deal.
Would you be willing to give him a 1-year deal for the money he is making currently? There is a belief amongst NBA players that once you sign for a lower number, it is harder to climb your way back up to a higher number, given that Shumpert would probably want to sign for, at minimum, what he's making already.
I don't think he could get a 2-year deal at what he's making right now, unless he really just keeps playing well, which I'm not exactly, intimately familiar with what his numbers look like this season. But I just don't see him getting that big of a deal. I mean, he's doing well, but you look around the league and people aren't really talking about him. I know that it's different in front offices. They keep tabs on these players, but to a certain extent, I don't know that he's playing out of his mind right now. Like the 39% from three, now that I pulled it up, that is very good. He has been good from behind the arc. He's a decent enough passer. He plays hard, but I just don't know who's going to go out there and give a 2-year, $18 million deal to a guy who's not even averaging 10 points a game.
Bro, you're low. You're low. He's making $11 million a year.
Oh yeah, 11.
Yeah,
it's not 9.
Yeah.
I'd do 1 year to $11 million if the Kings did not have other options, because he is still, like you said, 28. It's not like they're giving a deal to, some 36-year-old power forward that can't play anymore or something like that. But
that's
I don't mind.
Fair assessment. Let's get to the issue of, can we accept that the Kings are an average NBA team? Has enough of the season gone by, and can the Kings keep up the pace they are at, or at least some semblance of it, for the remainder of the season? I want to throw a couple numbers at you, John, before we get to that argument. The Kings have won 14 of their 26 games so far this season. If they were to win only 32% of their remaining games, they would win 18 more, and that would put them at 32 wins for the season. If they win 38%, so that's essentially worst case scenario, 32% is roughly a 27 win pace for an entire season. If they were to undergo the worst case scenario and fall back to a 27 or a team that wins at roughly a 27 win pace for the remainder of the season, that would mean they'd end up with 32 wins. 32 wins is pretty much a worst case scenario given where we are at right now. If they were to do a little bit better than that, win 38% of their games the rest of the way, they'd win 35 for the rest of the year, or for the total, for the entire year. They're right now winning about 54% of their games. If they split the difference between the worst case scenario and where they're winning right now, the pace they're winning at right now, they would win 38 games for the season. John Schifferle, are you ready to say on December the 11th, 2018, of the 2018-2019 NBA season, that the Sacramento Kings of Sacramento are an average NBA team?
So I've been doing this same exercise over the last month or so, trying to figure out exactly what you were just talking about. What is the worst case scenario, and where are we looking like we're going to finish anyway, and all that stuff. I think it really just comes down to Fox. Like, if Fox stays healthy, which we don't really have a reason to think he's not going to, then I think they're a real average NBA team. And if not, you look around, I don't think Willie Cauley-Stein is much better than he was last season. I don't think Buddy Hield has taken that much of a step forward. I mean, it's somewhat, but it's not that big of a difference from what he was doing last year. I think just not having Zach Randolph on the floor is obviously a plus. And Bogdanovich looks better for sure. I'll give you that. But like, if you look outside of Fox, this roster isn't necessarily just far and away better than it was last year. I think the Kings have a situation where they have a top 50 player on their team, and that player is basically keeping them from falling below a certain level on a night-to-night basis. Because if you look at that Chicago game last year, is definitely a blowout, and the Kings don't win. So what's the difference? It really is just Fox in that game to me. And I think we've seen that multiple times.
They have two possible all-stars on the team in Bogdanovich and Fox. I'd say that's... What? Was that you or your cat?
That was me. I mean, yeah. So Fox, I will agree with you. He has some level of outside chance at the All-Star game. I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think he's at least worth considering there. And, of course, he's at a point right now where I think he could be much more aggressive than he's been recently, and that could just boost his numbers even further. And then we're talking about a guy that just kind of needs to be in there, and he's got 2 months left to do that, so that's always possible. But Bogdanovich, I don't really see it happening.
Bogdanovich was the MVP of the rookie-sophomore game this past season.
Yeah, I'm sure there have been many MVPs of that game that never went on to do an All-Star game.
He may not make many All-Star games, but if you told me right now the over-under on his All-Stars is sitting at 2, I mean, you could talk me into taking the over on 3 All-Stars for Bogdan Bogdanovich. Simply because I think he's still got some room to grow. He can put up some big numbers. Yes, there's a lot of explosive players in the NBA. You've got to be one of the 24 most popular players. What he also has going for him is a fan base outside of the United States. That is a consideration to take into account because we are talking about the All-Star game, and they do count fan voting as part of the criteria for who makes it. He's extremely good. He's got an incredible, He's got an incredible, when people think highly of you throughout the league. People think highly of him throughout the league.
He's got an incredible reputation.
Reputation, exactly.
Yeah.
Couple those things together with the fact that he's a really, really good player. He definitely has all-star potential. There's any number of things that can happen in a given year. People can get injured. That happens. He is right there, in my opinion, being the second best player on this team in the conversation to be an all-star. I think he's played a little bit better. He feels like he's shooting better, or at least where he was, maybe a little bit better than he was last year. He is now getting the chance to showcase himself as the backup point guard for long stretches while Fox is on the bench. All of this means he's got a really good shot, in my view, to state his case to be an all-star in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, but you look at the guards, he'll have to beat out De'Aaron Fox first. Let's just start there on his own team. Second, he's going to have to beat out Steph Curry, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook, which are 3 MVP-level players that I just don't know that he's going to beat out. Then he's got to get past Klay Thompson, who I believe is scoring more than him at this point and didn't deal with the injuries and is a much better defender. So there's 4 guards plus Fox that he's going to have to beat out. And we haven't even gotten into, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. Like, I just don't see it happening for him this season. And part of it is also just going to be the fact that the Kings, it's going to be hard to convince anyone to put 2 All-Stars from the Kings in the game.
Please. What?
They're in the 9th seed. Not many 9 seeds are getting 2 All-Stars in. That's just not.
Oh, I guess.
No matter what, that's just how it works. And the Kings don't really have that pedigree. We're like the Rockets. They don't have a great record right now, but because it's James Harden and Chris Paul, they're both going to get that slight, we know you're All-Stars bump that Fox and Bogdanovich just are not going to get. And I think I'm talking right now, and maybe this is part of the disconnect here, is I'm mostly talking about what is actually going to happen based on the fans and the player voting and all that goes into that. And then, I think there's a different case to be made about who deserves to be the All-Star. And, maybe that's where Bogdanovich, I think he does better in that argument than he does in the will he actually get there.
I think he can get there. I'm going to hold to it.
He's got that potential.
Because one thing he's definitely doing right now is being less of a black hole. Of course, I talk about it, and he turns right around and proves me wrong. He's showing up as the backup point guard, taking over those duties for long stretches of games, and using his distribution skills. He's getting people involved. Yes, he is ending a good number of possessions still, but at least eye test for me as I'm watching these games, it feels like he's putting a little more emphasis to get everybody involved, making sure there's player movement, ball movement, so that those second units don't stagnate. That holds to what's been happening this year, which is we talk about something happening one way on this podcast, and all of a sudden it flips to the other way. I don't think we should take credit for it, but I'm definitely going to acknowledge it so that people can make up their minds for themselves.
Yeah, we're still just not on the same page here with Bogdanovich. Earlier I thought he was playing great, and you had your concerns, and now I'm not concerned. I think he's still playing well. I just don't think he's playing as well as he was a couple weeks ago. And
but defensively, he's not shooting enough for you. What?
The shot's not quite falling as much as it was. I mean, he was just on fire a couple weeks ago, and I think now he's settled in a little bit more. I mean, we'll see where it goes. It's so hard to know because I think if we know one thing at this point, it's that last year I don't think he was healthy.
Well, he might have been a little ragged, and tired from the fact that he was coming off a long season overseas. That probably had something to do with it.
But he's so much more aggressive this season. He's looking to score. He's looking to run the offense, and it's great to see. But he just looks like a different player. And as good as he was last season, this is not an indictment of his game last year. He was good. But now he's clearly gone to another level, and I just kind of wonder if that other level is partially, like you said, because he just played 90 straight games before coming to the Kings. So
I think that's it. It's really hard to come up with stuff to talk about the day after they blow a team out. And it was just, and also weirdly, it's not like there was a bunch of stuff you can chalk it up to. It was third quarter, Buddy and Fox Buddy and the Fox. That's fun to say. Buddy and the Fox showed up in that third quarter, put their foot down, their collective feet, two feet, one for each of them, or both feet, and put the Bulls away. They were electric from the field. Fox was filthy getting to the basket. They were making their free throws. Wink, wink, cough, cough. Which was fantastic. Everything was hitting on all cylinders in that third quarter. They doubled them up in that third quarter. They've done that a myriad of times already in this season. We're only 26 games in. They might have beaten. They're probably on pace to beat teams by more than 20 points, but beat as many teams by 20 points as they were beaten last year by 20 points, which is 11 games. It's just fantastic. And like I mentioned, just when something like that happens, when it's so black and white, it's almost difficult for us to come up with stuff to talk about. Yet we do that because we are professionals here at the Hoopball Sacramento Kings podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I'll point out, did you see in the fourth that Euro step from Fox?
Oh,
that he had?
Man, that was so pretty. I mean,
it's just, it goes to what we've already said, and I don't think you can say it enough how good he is this season, but it's just the unbelievably rare combination of a player that has the speed and body control to even do that, like in an open gym, no pressure, no one trying to defend you. Can you even just do that? And then, secondly, it kind of came off. He had that pump fake in the corner, and he came out, and I watched again today, and you can see he leads the guy to the left so that he has room to make the Euro step. He got him over to the left and then did it just so he could get the room to do it. Like, the game is just clearly, he's playing at a different speed than everyone else. It's, the game's happening to them, and he's making everything happen for himself. So great to see. He's going to be really special.
He is. It's fun. And the weird thing is, the cool thing is, we're still 1 or 2 years away from just the beginning of his prime. It will be something that we're going to be talking about coming up here. We're not going to talk about it right now because it's still a little bit a ways away. How this front office will put players around him that accentuate his skills and bring in the firepower, the necessary talent, so that his prime is not wasted, because it is going to be one of the preeminent careers that we've ever seen in Sacramento. At least that's the way it looks right now. And as a fan, you as a fan, everybody else as a fan, want to make sure that prime, we squeeze all the juice out of that prime that we can possibly get.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just going to be so special. I don't know if you saw this. It's on ESPN Plus, so probably not. But Kevin Pelton and Mike Schmitz from Draft Express were like doing the sophomore rankings based on potential.
Okay.
So they said that they both agreed that Mitchell and Tatum were in a clear tier on their own, which I thought was just ridiculous to not include Fox in that at this point. But what was even more ridiculous was Kevin Pelton coming in, obviously always a stats guy, and sometimes I think he has hot takes that he tries to hide with stats. And he basically said, statistically, this is still a pretty small sample for Fox, so I'm going to go with Ball all of last season still on the potential rankings over Fox because we just have to see more. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I find his reputation to be lower around the league than I would expect, but he's absolutely in there with Tatum and Mitchell. I can accept arguments for Tatum or Mitchell over him, but I would not trade him for either at this point. And again, as much as I thought it was ridiculous that he said, "Oh, I'm going to take all of last year for Ball over this year for Fox," hard to forget that Lonzo Ball shot 36% overall last year. So I'm not sure which numbers he's looking at that really blew him away there, but yeah, Fox's reputation is still catching up to what he's doing. Taking Ball's last season over
Fox so far this season is completely indefensible in my mind. Wanting to wait a little bit longer before you make up your mind on where De'Aaron Fox is defensible, especially because he's probably not watching every single game and doing a podcast on the Kings like we are, or watching every game like the folks listening and all the fans of the Kings.
I mean, I find it defensible when we're talking about Tatum, Mitchell, and Fox, because Tatum and Mitchell were actually great last season and both had big postseason performances. So I can see where you can say, you know what, this season, I think Fox is clearly above them this season. And so if you want to put both of them kind of in their own tier above Fox at this point, just because of how long it's been with them, yeah, okay, I get it. But outside of that, like, I don't know. I think it's a little ridiculous to put Fox anywhere lower than third. And I think if you're watching all the Kings games, it's pretty hard to put Fox even third at this point.
The last word from John Schifferle. You can find him on Twitter at John Schifferle. You can find me on Twitter at MyBuddyChris. For all of Hoopball's Sacramento Kings coverage on Twitter, it's at HoopballKings. And for all of your NBA news, NBA fantasy news, and Sacramento Kings coverage, period, it's hoop-ball.com. Get the season pass now so you can have access to all of the premium fantasy basketball content that Hoop-Ball puts out. If you're a new user to DraftKings, deposit $10 there. That'll get you access to the season pass for free. It's quite the deal. You can find this show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, the iHeartRadio app, and the Hoopball Radio app. Both of those apps are available for free to download in the iTunes and Google Play stores. For John Schifferle, I'm Christian Villere. See you next time.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.